Hello, everyone. Are we live?
Yeah, let's start over again because we're not sure everyone was on. So just briefly, if you, I think we had 30 people logged in, but I guess I don't know whether you were hearing or not. But just very briefly, so I'm Peter Young. I'm head of programs and on the board of Société Chimie Industrielle. I want to welcome you to this event. And we are going to have our panel for the first hour with Q&A. If you want to ask questions, just type them into the chat box and then we'll answer them. And then at the end, we're all going to go into the lounge or electronic ballroom where you can sit at whatever table you wish, and each table will be labeled by the panelist or moderator who will be there. I'm not sure whether you all heard this before, but I'm repeating it again. And now I'm going to turn it over again to Jennifer McCarthy.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, we're going to start from the top. Thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited to have you. Today, we're going to talk about the different functional roles that are available in the chemical industry. So whether you're early in your career, middle of your career, late in your career, we hope that you leave a little inspired today about all of the opportunities across our industry. Before I jump into introductions by having Stephanie start introducing us, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge these incredible women that are speaking with us today. We are so lucky to have them joining us. They are truly incredible. Stephanie is responsible for setting strategy, ensuring accountability across Sartomer Americas at Arkema. Jennifer owns the operations strategy across the industrial intermediates and infrastructure, including manufacturing and technology centers globally at Dow. Katara oversees R&D and I teams at Evonik that are delivering groundbreaking healthcare technologies that are impacting all of us. Megan is a scientist by discipline, yet is responsible for setting North American strategy for both procurement and logistics across all 4 business units at WACKER. They truly have broken barriers in our industry, and so we're really excited to have them today. A little bit about me before I pass to Stephanie. My background, I've been in the industry for a little over 20 years, earned my chemical engineering degree from the University of Washington, went into manufacturing and production for probably like the first 5 years or so of my career. Then I moved to Univar in chemical distribution, where I was a global product line manager, a global sales manager, and I left the company to go work for a startup called Xenon. We are offering alternative channels to market, and we're really leading the digital transformation that is emerging across our industry. So I've held a variety of roles from sales, business management, and strategic growth. So I would like to pass it to our panelists to tell us a little bit more about them, and then we're going to jump into the Q&A. Please feel free to submit your questions via chat. We really want this to be as interactive as possible. So Stephanie, do you want to take it away?
Thank you, Jennifer, and hello, good afternoon, everyone, again. I'm excited to be here today, so thank you for having me join this panel of really exceptional women to talk about our careers and our advice. I also started with a degree in chemical engineering from the University of Pennsylvania. Started off in a program at the time that was giving me some rotational experiences in a variety of different functions. I got to be an engineer at one of our manufacturing sites. I got to do some time in research. And I really found my place at the time in more of the business side of the chemical industry. And from an early stage, I moved into a product management position, which is kind of where I sort of grew up and really started to better understand the industry, really in that central function across manufacturing, supply chain, commercial activities. From there, I expanded and grew into a variety of roles across a number of companies, predominantly in the greater Philadelphia area, into roles around sales and marketing management, general business management, and kind of through a variety of moves from company to company, some by choice and some by either being bought or sold, which is kind of the way the chemical industry goes. I've had a variety of business cards, but have continued to move up in increasingly roles of increasing responsibility. I did, in part of that time frame while I was working, get my master's in business administration from from the Wharton School, so also stayed local in this general region here in the Mid-Atlantic. And I've worked for a variety of companies. Started with a company called ICI that doesn't exist anymore. Spent many years at FMC Corporation. Was then part of a standalone company that was divested to private equity called Peroxychem. Actually was sold to Evonik. One of my colleagues on the call works for them. Worked for a company called Quaker Houghton in metal chemistries, and joined Arkema here just about a year and a half ago in the regional president's role. So I've seen a lot of different chemistries, a lot of different business models and organizational designs. And certainly my role here as the regional president gives me the opportunity to get engaged mostly in the commercial activities, but also more broadly across our manufacturing, our R&D, procurement, logistics, all of the things. So for me, it's kind of the ideal situation to be involved and be able to influence and support my teams across our entire business.
Thank you, Stephanie. We're happy to have you. Jennifer, do you want to go next?
Certainly. And again, thank you for including me in this panel. My name is Jennifer Pfeiffer, and I work for Dow. I've been also a chemical engineer from Colorado State University. I've been with Dow and in the chemical industry for over 27 years now. And over that time, essentially my entire career was in manufacturing in multiple different locations, Texas, Michigan, Germany, and then back in Michigan where our headquarters are and where I sit today. Over that time, I've had the opportunity to work in multiple different technologies and in many different roles and different leadership responsibilities. I've been a production leader, I've been a plant leader, I've been projects and strategy leader. I've done some supply chain work. Which all led up to what I do today, which is leading one of Dow's 3 envelopes for operations. So I'm responsible for our global footprint for this envelope globally, and then sit on the leadership team, the business leadership team, really representing operations to the business leadership team, making sure that the decisions that they make are things that we can actually execute and that our needs are met, and vice versa, making sure that the business strategy is translated to our manufacturing, engineering, and technology organization globally. So happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Jennifer. Megan.
Hi. So I am not a chemical engineer. Actually, I studied textile chemistry. I graduated with 3 other students in my program at Clemson University. Originally, I was very interested in forensic science, and I thought, okay, I can go into textile chemistry and work in fiber analysis. But in the meantime, the show CSI came out and taught everybody fake science. Don't believe what you see on that show. And grew interest in working in that field. And so I decided to pivot and not follow my dreams in working for the FBI. I got a master's degree in textile fiber and polymer science, and then spent some years working in textile manufacturing as a process chemist at Milliken and Company. And then moved to WACKER after just 3 years at Milliken, and I've been at WACKER for 19 years now. I started at a site in South Carolina, a very small site, working with chemistry for textile applications. So I was really using my degree then. And after a few years, moved to Michigan, based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and spent years as a technical manager, then decided I liked working with customers and people more than I liked working with chemicals in a lab. So I moved into sales and got my MBA at night at the University of Michigan. And after 5 years in sales, I decided I wanted to try human resources. We were launching a new talent development program here in the US, and I helped to create management and leadership development programs. And I was in the classroom teaching all of our managers in the US the skills to be great leaders. And I loved that role. But after some time, I felt like, okay, I've learned what I can here, and I've had the impact that I wanted to have, and decided to move back into the business. Most of my time has been in our silicones business, and I led a business team for consumer silicones, which is applications for personal care, home care, release coatings on paper, and also textile. So I still had that link to the textile roots. And then an opportunity came up to go and work at our largest manufacturing site in Burghausen, Germany, in HR again. Never dreamt studying textile chemistry that one day I would work in corporate human resources, especially in Germany. But there it was. And I spent 16 months in that role before I came back to the US at the start of this year and moved into a brand new field for me of procurement and logistics. And I have responsibility for the Americas. So we have 11 sites in the US, we have 1 site in Mexico, and 1 site in Brazil that are under my umbrella. So yeah, I tell people
Amazing.
I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, but I'm very happy at WACKER and the opportunities that they've offered to me.
It's so interesting how you end up in HR when you never think. And I know at Evonik, there's quite a few leaders that tend to go into that HR route before they go back to leading businesses themselves. It's a really interesting journey. So thank you for that, Megan. Katara, tell us about you.
Yeah, and hello everyone. So you can hear me, correct? Good.
Yep.
All right. So hello everyone. Yes, Katara Shaw. I'm a director of research development and innovation at Evonik. And as Jennifer mentioned, my team's focus areas in healthcare. I'm located at our site in Birmingham, Alabama. And in the Birmingham site, we perform R&D efforts for injectable drug products, bioresorbable polymers that are used for drug delivery and medical device applications, and also research into medical devices. So textiles, Megan fits here with us here. I've been with Evonik and a couple of predecessor companies through acquisition for 18 years now. And during my career, I had roles in drug product development, commercial project management, and now in R&D. So kind of seeing that full spectrum of how to get products to market, right? Start very early in the innovation, and how do you move it through, and how do you commercialize it? Been a great experience kind of moving from one to the next to gain all that understanding and learning and those attributes. As for my educational background, I have a degree in chemical engineering from the University of Alabama.
Thanks, Katara. It's so important, the work that you do. I mean, it really impacts us every day. So I want to talk a little bit more about each of your roles and how your roles are really contributing to the overall success of your organization, but also the chemical industry kind of in general. So we've learned a little bit about your career paths and what you guys have done. So Jennifer, I'd love to hear a little bit from you about manufacturing and production and this huge job that you have running one of the 3 envelopes at Dow. Tell us a little bit about your role in detail and how it contributes to the overall success of the organization and the industry.
Yeah, certainly. As I mentioned prior, so I have responsibility for operations for one of our 3 envelopes. And so, I'd say, half my job is leading the manufacturing facilities. And yes, it's a lot of facilities. I think 65-ish facilities globally, all over the world. But I have a lot of people in my organization that are helping lead the plants. And so my role becomes more on the strategic side in understanding, where is our business going? What are the needs of the business? What are the constraints? And then how do we as a manufacturing organization, because at the end of the day, we're a manufacturing company, how do we align to that? How do we inform that? I have accountability for all of our capital investments. So really understanding how to prioritize our capital spend and where to focus on, kind of maintaining our facilities, our EH&S objectives, and then growth, and really finding the, I'd say, the balance between those objectives as it relates to allocating resources. So I spend about half of my time really leading the function, but the other half of the time is I do represent operations on the global leadership team. So working with my colleagues in the other functions, whether that be supply chain or finance, purchasing, HR, and then of course our global business president, really helping to inform the business strategy and really be part of the business leadership team. I like to say that I'm a business leader that happens to lead operations. And I think we have to think that way. And so I love the opportunity, to get to sort of live in that business space for half of, I'd say roughly half of my time. I actually sit at our headquarters. So I'm really embedded in with the global leadership team, more so than I am with the assets, although I do travel around to see the plants quite frequently. So the way that my role really creates value is through that, kind of that transferring of information, knowledge, strategy, and resource allocation between our large global manufacturing footprint and our leadership team.
When I think of the business and how you partner with the business, I usually think of like commercial, right? I usually think of like, what are the commercial activities that the business is participating in, and how do we sort of align that to the operations of the organization to both optimize it and also prepare for potential growth areas, or how we want to pivot with new technologies maybe that need to be manufactured. Jennifer, can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what are the things that you have to pull from the business, and where do you find yourself negotiating with them, if you will, on assets and timing and optimization and all of those things?
We spend a lot of time talking about resources, particularly in today's economies, right? I mean, the macroeconomics of the world today are not excellent for large global manufacturing companies, right? So we have to navigate a lot of world complexity. So we spend a lot of time talking about resources. I spend the majority of the money for the business, having the large manufacturing organization, and I have the majority of the people. So it's a lot of making sure that we're not overdoing what it is that we need to do, such that the business can't be competitive in what has become a very difficult and competitive landscape, but also not not representing what our needs are to ensure that we can continue to operate our facilities safely, reliably, and making quality product. And so really titrating those two things is a lot of what I spend my time doing. And there's times where I have to really be an advocate for the facilities and say, no, we have to do this, and I have to make that case in an effective way. And then on the flip side, there's times where I have to be going back to my plant leaders and site leaders and saying, okay, we can't do that. We have to think differently. How are we going to innovate? So it's knowing which way to push that discussion, and really titrating between, I'd say two very important priorities.
Yeah. I see you shaking your head also, Megan. When I think about manufacturing and production and preparing for delivering to the commercial plan and strategy, I think about, how do we get the products? How do we get those raw materials on time? How do we get them to feed reliably into the production and manufacturing process? Tell us about procurement. Tell us about how that ties into logistics and the importance. And if you want to take us to the Wayback Machine, we were in kind of the supply chain crunch a few years ago. We'd love to resurface some of the trauma with you, and maybe some of the learnings, and maybe we can talk a little bit about what that's like for you.
Okay, great. Yeah, you can be my therapist.
We're here for
Yeah.
you.
So procurement and logistics are really at the beginning and the end of the whole supply chain process. When you think about everything that must happen in order to get product to the customer at the end of the day, we purchase the raw materials, the energy, the equipment, the services, everything that's needed to enable production, to enable research, to enable sales, etc. And then to deliver the product to our customer at the end. And our motto for procurement and logistics at WACKER is never be the bottleneck. And to me, what that means is that in the end, a lot of what we do ideally goes kind of unnoticed by others, because if I'm not getting phone calls, it's because things are running smoothly. If they're coming to us, it's maybe we have a shortage of a raw material, a supplier is not delivering on time as they promised, or their lead times have extended, or there's a looming port strike and closure, or trucks aren't available. There's a driver shortage and we can't get product to the customer, deliver on time. So really, when we're brought in, it's because there are issues. So a lot of what we spend our time on is risk mitigation. It's anticipating, looking at the entire picture, the entire value chain of what we procure, and what could go wrong along the way. And is it we need to find sourcing from another region in case bad weather strikes Texas, and a lot of our suppliers have to declare force majeure. So maybe it's sourcing from another region, bringing in a different supplier just in case. It's identifying those areas where things can go wrong and doing whatever we can to bring options in case they go wrong, so that we're not scrambling in the moment when things fall apart. As for several years ago, I was in the business at that time, and I think the most difficult part for me was our sales team was so accustomed to being able to find a solution to whatever the problem was, right? If we call one more plant, we'll find a pallet of drums that we can air freight to the customer and have it arrive just in time so they don't shut down. And during the pandemic, with the global logistics crisis, there were so many cases where there just weren't answers, or not quick solutions in time. And that was very difficult for people to accept and to communicate to customers. And yes, I still relive some of that trauma in my mind sometimes. And yes, that's my job now, is anticipating that and preparing for the next disaster.
Yeah. Thank you for that so much. Katara, I'm thinking about you, and I'm thinking before we get to securing the products and making the stuff, there's all of this innovation that's kind of happening. And usually that's being led by the business or being led by trends. Tell us about that. Like, it's so interesting how you at Evonik are really thinking about your offering, and how do you continue to innovate, and how do you make it really compelling, and how do you get people excited about it? And I have to tell you, from where I sit, some of the things that Evonik has had its hands in have been really amazing. I mean, truly, those healthcare products that you're making are enabling us to kind of have our health and live longer and do all of those things. I'm just fascinated by all of your work. So tell us a little bit about innovation. How do you stay ahead of it? What are the things that you're working on? How do you predict what's next?
Right. So, I mean, as you said, it's, and I think as the guys have a little bit talked about, it's with the customers, right? I mean, we have to hear the voice of the customer. We have to see, and let me take a step back a little bit. In the area where I am in healthcare, we're very customer centric. We offer development services, products, and also research. So we don't innovate for the sake of innovating, right? We have to innovate with a purpose. And so we have to listen to what's needed from our customer bases out there. So those pharma companies and those med device companies, we're very customer centric, like I said. So that means we're partnering with them to deliver what's needed for the market, but ultimately what's needed for the patients, right? And so our customer is reacting to what's needed out there to the patients, and we're reacting to, okay, what's needed for our customers. So again, yeah, like you said, we have to stay on the precipice. We have to stay sort of ahead of the game. We have to always be looking at how can we modify our existing technologies to produce things better, more efficiently, faster, so that we deliver that faster. But on the other side, looking into deeper in the science and technology, again, what's an exciting area right now? Nanomedicines. But what's behind that? Targeted drug delivery, right? So we're not delivering the drugs systemically that are going to ultimately have all these bad side effects. We have very customized solutions that these drugs are going to go exactly where they're needed in the bodies and do the healing, everything and delivering the drugs that's needed to heal the people without some of these harmful side effects. And so is that always within Evonik's capabilities to do? No, it also means that we have to look out into the universities and the science communities, and sometimes startups, right? And see what those guys are initially creating. And then partnering with them also and saying, okay, within the power of Evonik, we can take your starting point and we can commercialize it, right? Yeah. So that's sort of what we're looking for.
Inspiring. Stephanie, you have your hands kind of in all of these different functions, sort of overseeing all of the things as kind of the president at Arkema there. Tell us a little bit about how do you set the strategy and the plan? What are kind of the key activities that you're really focused on within your role?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I'm sitting here listening to all this interesting commentary. And I think for me, it's all about alignment, and then I'd say balance. And then I say those words, and I think maybe I'm going into a yoga workout or something. But really, it's first of all making sure that all of the different functions supporting the organization understand the direction that we're going in. From an external perspective, our sales team needs to have a high level of customer intimacy. They need to understand what the needs of our customers are, how those customers are thinking and how they're making decisions, what trends are they following, what product development they're interested in. And right now we're looking at adapting our product portfolio to meet more trends related to regulatory requirements or sustainability. And so really making sure that we can then translate what we're hearing from the customers into the rest of the organization, so that we are doing our development work, that we're building our innovation pipeline to meet the needs of those customers, and then continuing to have our marketing teams really understand how to target those customers and how to make sure that customers are attracted to our business versus our competitors. And that's, the reality is we operate in a very competitive environment. And so the balance in all of that external focus and approach is making sure that we maintain ourselves as a competitive business. And so there's a lot of focus on making sure that we're controlling our costs, that we're managing our raw material suppliers accordingly, that we're operating safely in our plants, that we can be a reliable, sustainable producer long term. And so, there's constantly that sort of internal and external forces that are coming together that all have to be pulled, integrated into one strategy. A lot of what I do on the sort of ongoing basis is dictated probably on the basis of like a financial cycle and a planning cycle. So, there's parts of times during the year where we're looking out, building on updating and modifying our long-term planning, just based on new trends and things that we're introducing to the market. And there's certainly parts of the year when we're looking at a very short term, what is our budget for next year? What are our results? How are we evaluating ourselves from a financial perspective? How are we deciding how to allocate our resources, whether that's capital, whether that's people? Are we all focused on the right things? And so it really does require integrating all the inputs coming from a variety of different functions, a lot of expertise in the organization in their sort of functional topics, but also helping people better understand how all of those things are working together, all in the same direction. And that really is pulling the strategy together, having a vision for where the business is heading, integrating, not only from a regional perspective, but for me, integrating from a more global perspective. We're operating in a global marketplace now. We have been, so really trying to understand how are we being impacted by things like regulations around the world, or geopolitical events and things that are changing in the world. So really trying to understand how all of those factors are going to influence our ability to operate, our performance objectives and expectations, where we should seek and gain new business, and changes that we might need to make to our own operations, our own structure, our own, where we have people around the world. So really just, it's a lot. I think it sounds complex, and it is, but it really does rely on, a key group of functional leaders and experts that all have a common understanding of what's going on, both internally and externally, to pull that together and make sure that we're all rowing in the same direction.
I bet it helps that you have the engineering mindset of process and flow and organization to sort of cut all of those complex parts into bite-sized pieces where you can sort of get your arms around them.
And that's a great point, because I think you'll find that throughout the chemical industry, and even just by example, the people on this panel, we all have technical backgrounds of one way or another. Well, that's not the case for everyone in my organization, and I'm sure for the others as well. It certainly is the case in a lot of different parts of the organization. certainly in more technical areas like operations or R&D, but even the same for us here at Arkema in other functions like HR, finance, and elsewhere. We do have a lot of people that have that sort of technical mindset, that analytical perspective, the ability to really dissect a problem and come up with creative solutions. So that is absolutely something that I've found industry-wide in the variety of companies that I've worked for.
Yeah, same. Well, thank you for that. I'm going to pivot a little bit. We've talked a lot about your career paths and how you've really got to where you're at. We talked a lot about your roles and the insights associated to your roles, which is amazing. But now I want to talk about the nitty gritty. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced in your role today? And what do you find on the other side? What do you find to be the most rewarding about your role? And I'm seeing you shake your head, Megan, so I'm just going to throw it to you.
Sure. And I alluded to this a little bit in my previous answer, but
Yeah.
the biggest challenge, and Stephanie also alluded to it, the biggest challenge is dealing with increasing complexity and the interconnectedness of the world today. You know, one port closure can have ripple effects that cripple global logistics, or one winter storm can wipe out significant raw material supply, and one political decision can cause the cost of a particular raw material to skyrocket suddenly. And these major disruptions can happen often with no warning, and they can impact an entire industry or sometimes multiple industries, as in the case of a port closure. And it can really be difficult to find solutions when everyone is panicking, everyone is searching for the same resource. Some risks, they can be anticipated, they can be mitigated by planning ahead, but it's impossible to prepare for every possible scenario. So that is what keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
But what I find really rewarding is working with people and achieving success together. You know, when we do have these crises, these emergency situations, like everybody pulls together and no one person has all of the answers. It takes a cross-functional team with different skills, different strengths, and some healthy debate, of course, to ultimately come to the best possible results. And when you do that, when you overcome these obstacles together, it's such a fantastic feeling.
Yeah. How about you, Jennifer? What would you say is the biggest challenge that you face in your role, and what do you find to be the most rewarding?
Yeah, Megan said it well. I mean, the macroeconomic challenges, I mentioned them earlier, are significant when you're operating and you have global supply chains and global procurement chains, and you've got manufacturing facilities in all kinds of countries. So it's all interconnected. So I think your point is very valid, and it does make our jobs very complex. Requires a lot of agility. You know, you can only pre-plan for so much, right, Megan? So you also have to know how to react and respond. And so we spend a lot of time with our organization just teaching them how to react, how to be agile, how to be innovative in the moment. So that is certainly a challenge. Another huge challenge for me and for our company really is in the sustainability space. It's a challenge and an opportunity. You know, what does chemical manufacturing look like in the future? How do we contribute to that, you know, that net zero future? How do we think about circularity and sustainability, which are great opportunities to develop technologies, to lead, and to offer different solutions to customers. But they're also technical challenges. And so it's balancing sort of that short term, you know, kind of the economic conditions that we have today, which are not great for making big, large scale investments, but at the same time needing to ensure that we're thinking about that future and making big, bold moves. And so it's always those trade-offs. And so those are some of the challenges. You know, workforce is different as well. I made that as a note. You know, we you know, I think the population of young engineers, for example, that we're hiring think about their careers differently. They think about the companies they're willing to work for differently. And so you have to be able to compete for talent. And that means you have to really lean into your value proposition, not just as a company for your customers, but for your employees, and making that case to ensure that we retain top talent. On the rewarding side, though, it's almost the inverse of those, because all of those are opportunities. I love the opportunity to grow and develop our next generation, our next wave of talent. Doing something like this is an opportunity to do that. And just seeing how our industry is changing, you know, from the time I started in this industry 30 years ago to today, you know, we're not where we need to be, but I see a lot more women, I see a lot more people of color, and just recognizing that we are changing the industry is very rewarding as well.
Yeah. Katara, what do you find to be the biggest challenge in your role today? And what do you think is the most rewarding thing?
Yeah, and I'm kind of going to take what Jennifer said toward the end there and kind of expand a little bit more on that, as she talked about the women in industry now, right? So being a woman, and for me, being a Black woman, right, in a high level role in a corporation is challenging, right? Just put it out there. And like Jennifer said, as the numbers are improving with women in high level positions, there's still not many of us there. We're seeing it get better, but we still got to continue to promote and get it even better than where it is. So I think it's still a challenge that we get our perspectives heard and understood, right, and to become visible in the room, right. I believe women, we see things differently, we think differently. It's inherent, right, because we all have different experiences from our male counterparts, right, and being a Black woman, for me, that also adds another dimension, right? So I think one of the things we talked about earlier this year at another Societe panel was sponsorship, right? So just to kind of give a little bit of a flavor for that. Sponsorship is very important, right? I think to overcoming some of these challenges that I mentioned, because it can be, like I said, difficult for women to become visible and get a seat at that table. So as an example, for me getting to my current role, I had a sponsor who is a woman, and she helped me to kind of see some things in myself that I wasn't fully aware of at the time, right? She saw my ability to lead in difficult situations and my people skills. And she had a great confidence in me that I could do the job that I'm doing now. But of course, I didn't think I was the ideal candidate. And I think we as women tend to self-doubt, right? Often ourselves, or we can do that. But she was saying to me, why not you? And so I said, yeah, then why not me, right? And she helped me to embrace that confidence that I had instilled in me and kind of bring it out of me. And then there have been others, right, that have supported me in my career, also as sponsors as I have progressed. So I see it now, right? You talk about what's rewarding. I see it now as I have progressed. It's now my responsibility to provide and facilitate those opportunities for other women. And when I see those women that I've kind of helped and sponsored and mentored to get to those next steps, and I see them take those next steps in their career and grow, that's very rewarding to me, right? Somebody has done it for me, help pay it forward to the next opportunities. And hopefully we grow the women and we get more seats at the table.
Yeah, excellent. Like I'm looking at the time here, we're getting kind of close to moving to the next kind of platform for this. So before we do that though, I just want to ask you all one more question. And it kind of is on the heels of this talent. And it's on the heels of your roles and what you do. And I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the things that you look for in young talent or mid-level people within their careers. What do you look for? What is kind of that couple of characteristics that you're looking for that really stand out to you when you're looking for people to bring on your team or you're looking for people to move into your leadership roles? What are those things? And I'll look at you, Jennifer. Tell us a little bit about what some of those things are that you look for in that emerging talent.
I was going to make notes, but you put me on the spot, so I'll just jump out there.
Well, you kind of were talking about it towards the end, and I think it's such an important thing when we think about how do we retain talent and bring talent in, and you really started my thinking around that.
Yes, so you know we're usually hiring technical talent. At least I am. I mean, obviously we hire beyond that for our operators and things like that. But for when we're hiring our technical talent, so if we think about our onboarding engineers, I find that everybody is technically sound, right? Generally, these folks have strong technical skills and are able to learn technology, even if they don't know exactly what that they're coming into. So what I'm looking for is those other skills that make people successful. So I'm looking for agility and bias for action and a willingness to go maybe outside the defined boundaries of their role to ensure that the greater work, everything we do is in a team, particularly in manufacturing. And so role definitions can get a little bit fuzzy. So you're looking for people that are willing to work outside their boundaries. And then the last thing I would say, because I talk a lot about this when I mentor young people, is communication. How well can people communicate? Because we work in a very dynamic, fast-paced environment that's constantly needing to change. And if you can't communicate effectively to your team, to your peers, to your stakeholders, you get left behind.
It's so true. Communication is so important. Stephanie, how about you? What are some of those like key characteristics that you're really looking for in the talent that you're bringing on board or you're spending the time to sponsor or mentor?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll just second everything that Jennifer just said. I think some of the ones that really resound for me are that sort of stretching outside the boundaries, people who have this thirst to get involved in more project work, to kind of maybe put themselves in an area that's not quite their comfort zone, to give them an opportunity to learn more and stretch. From a communication perspective, certainly looking for people who have the ability to build those bridges, whether it be within their own teams or across different functions or different cultural areas, different regions, people who have kind of a willingness to flex and to understand how to work with a variety of individuals that come from different backgrounds, that have different perspectives and different approaches to how the work gets done. And definitely people that have initiative, or as Jennifer said, kind of a bias for action. I think, people come in with a very, sound technical skill set, or at least education. The experiences they can get will give them, in my case, maybe the business acumen that they might need as they kind of learn and grow and develop on a job. But that sort of openness and willingness to absorb all the information from people around them and then interpret that and continue to grow and excel in their roles is really something that stands out to me.
Yeah. I think the development of the business acumen as an engineer is such a critical component. We don't really talk about it that much in the chemical engineering program. I think we have like 1 or 2 classes on that. And I certainly didn't pay as close attention to that part of the courses as I did to all of the other ones that were more interesting and fascinating to me. But closing that gap on business acumen is so important, and really applying it to sound business sense becomes one of those essential characteristics for everybody. So anyway, Katara, back to you. Tell us a little bit about some of the skill sets that you think are really essential when you're looking for people to add to your team.
Yeah, and just echoing the 2 ladies and that have gone before, right? All those attributes, right? Consider as well. And I think, as you just mentioned, right, how it can be difficult for maybe an engineer or scientist to think along the lines of business acumen, at least to grow into that, right? Being more technically sound. I think from an RDI perspective, or an R&D perspective, at least here at Evonik, right, we try to ingrain and instill that even if we're getting into the innovation concepts, right? Again, we're innovating for a purpose to deliver something to the market, but it also, at the end of the day, has to be profitable, has some sustainability attributes as well, right? So we think about that very early, and we help to kind of shape those scientists and engineers, right, to think about those things very early on, and hopefully help take that forward. But I think ultimately, even from going from the technical to the business perspective, I mean, we as engineers, what do? We're problem solvers, right? And so as we all talked about maybe from the beginning, we had different touch points on how we're solving problems every day. And I think that is a skill set that I would be looking for, right? Of people coming in, problem solvers, bringing solutions. Maybe it's not the perfect thing, but okay, you brought an idea. Let's continue to expand upon it, talk about it, and grow it and develop it, and add more, maybe more experienced people's ideas to it, and come out with a good solution, appropriate solution to move us forward.
What do you think, Megan?
Yes, all of that plus, and the
Yeah,
only thing I
totally.
think I can add is a sincere level of curiosity in the interview needs to come out for me. Like, I want to hear what questions they have for me and for my colleagues and about WACKER as an employer. I want to see that they're seeking for a good match for them. You know, they should be interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing a candidate. And that curiosity, of course, will carry them far in the role as well, to understand why are things the way that they are, you know, before you go rushing in to make changes. And that's great when someone new comes in with fresh ideas and everything. I think you really have to understand why it is the way it is to understand how you can make those changes in the most effective way in the end. So
Yeah.
that's it.
Well, thank you so much, all of you, for participating in the panel today. I just hearing your thoughts about your career journeys and the importance of your roles and how you balance it all is super inspiring. And I just want to hold for maybe one or two more questions broadly that we want to ask. Otherwise, Peter, we might be ready to move out into kind of the breakout sessions where we can have a little bit more time with our panelists.
Yeah. Jennifer, do you see any questions that you want to try to
Oh.
address?
Let's see.
I'll let you choose since you're the quarterback on this. There was a famous professor, by the way, who always started his speeches and said, when we get to the Q&A, please phrase all your questions in the form of a compliment.
Okay, well, here's one. Hey, those are some amazing points. Thanks for sharing. If we have time, could someone share some thoughts about the employment of international students, like sponsorship and global opportunities that this industry offers?
I mean, I'll step in, and I think we all work for companies that operate globally. So my company is based in France. We have a lot of people that move around, and even Megan had said she lived in Europe. I mean, we do bring people from different parts of the world to work here in the U.S., and we have some pretty specific programs that, one, create international mentorship for younger employees coming from the U.S. going abroad, but also in all of those different directions. So we definitely create a multinational workforce, and still, and it's an investment in employees to do this, but there's still a significant driver to bring people in internationally, to send them abroad for rounding out their experiences. And it's actually in many cases, what I've observed here at Arkema is having evidence that you can work and interact across cultures and across countries is part of the criteria to continuing to be elevated in your career. So whether that's physically having lived in another country and having that experience, or having a lot of coordination and communication and leadership across regions is also a pretty important part of continuing to accelerate.
Yeah. We've got one more question that's coming in. As a current senior undergrad engineering student, what are some of the best ways or ways that you seek a young talent to acquire that business acumen that we talked about?
Anyone else want to answer? I can answer as well. Go ahead, Megan, if you want to.
I think there's tremendous opportunity once you're in a company to seek that and to gain that, depending on the role that you're in, volunteering to represent your department on a project, going and talking with other people in the lunchroom to learn about the business. If you're working in a technical role, you want to learn more from your colleagues. I think there's really endless opportunities. You just have to seek it yourself, right? And of course, if you express interest in learning about different areas with your manager, they can help facilitate some of that for you. Like Katara said, really, looking looking out for our younger talent, our newer talent in the organization, what skills they want to develop, advocating for them, recognizing maybe skills and talents within those people that they don't see themselves. I think you could possibly move into sales someday. Have you ever thought about that and having those conversations with people? That's our responsibility to do. But I think, yeah, as someone coming in new to a company, there really are quite a few opportunities if you seek it.
If I can add just one thing, Jen, I'll be quick because I know we're short on time.
No, please.
So I totally agree with what Megan said. Once you're in the workforce, I think there's lots of opportunity if you seek it out. But I have also seen some really good examples of people coming into the workforce with really good business acumen skills. I'm the Dow's lead recruiter or sponsor of our National Society for Black Engineers engagement with NSBE. And so every year at the conference I go and I get an opportunity to interview the incoming talent. And I have to say, I probably couldn't compete with half of these people today. But what I've seen is a lot of talent that they've either through nonprofits and engagements like that have established some business acumen. And last year at the conference, I interviewed 2 people that had started their own businesses. These were small businesses, but they were able to talk very fluidly in business concepts. So I would say the talent out there is really raising the bar on this, because I think they're recognizing that the combination of business skills and technical skills is what companies like all of ours are looking for. So I would say think about if there are some ways that you can differentiate yourself in some of those avenues, even ahead of going to those company interviews.
Yeah.
So
We've got.
So I think we've run out of time for the panel and Q&A. I just want to say just 2 things. One is Société de Chimie Industrielle. We give lots of scholarships to people studying chemicals, chemical engineering, biotech, et cetera. We've got a huge education group that does that. And many of our events are focused on exactly this, which is how to manage your career, how to be successful, and so forth. There's one comment that I think comes up all the time, which is you can get all this great advice from Katara, Megan, Stephanie, and the 2 Jennifers, right? But the first thing we would always encourage you to do is do a good job of self-assessment, because everyone's different. Some people are good in sales, some people are not. Some people are good in manufacturing, some people thrive in large companies, and some people, they can't deal with politics or so forth. So one of the things I would encourage everyone in the audience as you think about your careers, particularly if you're starting out, is do a good job of doing an honest self-assessment about yourself, what your needs are, what you're good at, what you're not, what you like. Because at the end of the day, it's a matching of you with a career and a matching of you with a company. And I think it's very important. I learned that, if you have a very short attention span, don't become a professor, right? Because you can't write a book in 2 weeks. So, I mean, things like that are very, very important. Now, if, AirMeet, which is a platform here, they keep changing all the buttons. So there's about a 75% chance that if I click the button that I think is the right button, that will send the speakers to the backstage and then all of you to the lounge, that I'm going to screw up. And we've already learned that at the beginning of this session, because they changed the button on how you start the session. So if I do chop everyone off, I apologize in advance, but it won't be intentional. But what we're about to do now, or at least I think I'm about to do now, is take the speakers from the stage to the backstage, where then they will exit the backstage and go to the lounge or electronic ballroom. And for all of you, I think when I end the session, you're going to find yourself either in the electronic ballroom or with a button that says go to lounge, and you click on that. So with that, let's keep our fingers crossed that it doesn't get screwed up. And again, now that you've had a chance to hear all these, we're going to find out who was really popular, right? We're going to take a look and see who sits at how many tables, and we'll do a tally and give an award. So with that, I encourage all of you to, go to the tables. You can go from one table to another, or just stay at one table for the whole time. But hopefully this works.